My fiancée and her family tried taking half my company after I built it from nothing, so I cut them off, sent the evidence, and watched them beg for forgiveness. I'm a 34-year-old male, and I need to get this off my chest because it's been eating at me for weeks now. This is going to be a long post, and honestly, I'm still trying to process everything that happened. My fiancée, Tiffany, 29, and I have been together for 3 years and engaged for the last 8 months. Everything was perfect until about 2 months ago, when things started feeling different. Some background. I own a chain of organic grocery stores. I started with one tiny shop in a not-so-great location 10 years ago. Everyone told me I was crazy to compete with the big supermarkets. But I had this vision of creating something different. Places where people could get quality organic food without spending their whole paycheck. Those first few years were brutal. I'm talking about sleeping on a mattress in my office some nights because I couldn't afford rent and keep the store running. I dealt with suppliers who wouldn't take me seriously, equipment breaking down when I could barely afford repairs, and trying to convince customers to give this new little store a chance. But I worked hard, and eventually, that one store became 2, then 5, and now we have 12 locations across 3 states. I'm not trying to brag. I just want to explain why what happened next hit me so hard. When Tiffany and I first started talking about marriage, I was totally upfront about wanting a prenup. It wasn't because I didn't trust her. It was about protecting something I literally poured my entire life into building. She seemed to get it completely. She'd say things like, "I understand how hard you worked for this, and I respect that you want to protect your business." She even told her friends I was being really fair about everything, and I was. I made sure she'd always have security, no matter what happened. I set up a savings account in her name, gave her an emergency credit card for anything she needed, and made sure the prenup wasn't just about protecting me. It was fair to both of us. I never wanted her to feel trapped or like she had nothing to fall back on. I wanted her to feel safe with or without me. But then things started changing. It was subtle at first. She'd make little comments about how married couples should share everything, or send me links to articles about couples who split everything 50-50ths, even their businesses. I didn't think much of it at the time. Everyone gets nervous about marriage stuff, right? Then she started asking more questions about the business-specific ones about profit margins and expansion plans. She'd never cared about that stuff before. She'd sit in when I was on the phone with my business partners, pretending to just be hanging out, but clearly listening to everything. The real weird part started when she began talking about how she wanted to contribute to the business. Mind you, Tiffany's background is in social media marketing for small clothing brands. There's nothing wrong with that, but she's never shown any interest in grocery store operations before. Suddenly, she's talking about wanting an office at our headquarters and suggesting she should oversee our social media strategy. I started noticing other changes too. She used to be super independent about money, always insisting on paying her share of date nights and buying her own stuff. But lately, she's been putting everything on our shared car dime, talking about $500 shopping trips at Nordstrom, fancy spa days, and expensive workout classes. When I gently brought it up, she got defensive and said, "Well, we're getting married anyway, right? What's yours is mine." I kept telling myself I was overthinking things. Maybe she was just excited about the wedding. Maybe she really did want to be more involved in the business. But something in my gut wasn't sitting right. Then last week happened. I was going through some paperwork in my home office when I found an odd copy of our prenup agreement. Except it wasn't the same one we discussed with our lawyers. Not even close. This version had all these extra sections about profit sharing, business ownership stakes, and how she'd be entitled to half of everything, including future expansions, even if we got divorced after just a year. I must have read it 20 times, each time thinking maybe I was misunderstanding something. But nope, someone had clearly made major changes to our agreement. I remembered how Tiffany had casually mentioned she was having a lawyer friend look over the paperwork. Turns out, she did way more than just look it over. All I could think of at that moment was that the Tiffany I fell in love with would never do something like this. She was always so supportive of my business, always proud of what I had built. Now, I'm left wondering if I ever really knew her at all. After discovering the modified prenup, I spent 2 hours sitting in my office trying to calm down. One kept reading through the changes, and honestly, it was worse than I initially thought. Not only did she add clauses about getting half of my current stores, but she also snuck in terms about future expansions. There was even a clause about getting a percentage of online sales, which we don't even have yet since it's still just in the planning phase. I called Tiffany and asked her to come over. I tried to keep my voice steady, but she must have sensed something was off because she started asking if everything was okay. I told her we needed to discuss some paperwork, and she said she'd be over in an hour. That hour felt like the longest of my life. I laid out both versions of the prenup on my desk, the original one we agreed on, and this new version. I also pulled up my bank statements to show all her recent spending. When Tiffany arrived, she was wearing a fancy new blazer I had never seen before. I found out later it was a $900 purchase from last week. She walked in confidently, giving me a kiss as if everything was normal. But as soon as she spotted the papers on my desk, her whole demeanor shifted. I tried to stay calm and held up both versions, asking, "Can you explain why these are different?" At first, she played dumb, claiming she didn't understand what I was talking about. So I got specific and pointed out the new clauses about profit sharing and expansion rights. You want to know what she said? She looked me straight in the face and said, "Oh, those? They're just standard protections. Any smart person would have them in their prenup. Standard protections. I've been in the grocery business for 10 years. I know tons of other store owners, and none of them have prenups that give their spouses rights to future business expansions. That's just not a thing." I pointed to the clause about her getting decision-making power in the company and asked what she knew about running grocery stores. She got defensive, claiming she had been learning about the business and deserved a say in our future. The truth is, Tiffany has never worked in retail or anything remotely similar. She's been doing social media for small fashion brands, making Instagram posts about dresses and such. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's completely different from managing grocery store chains. She's never dealt with produce suppliers, inventory systems, or store operations. Then she started this whole speech about how I clearly don't trust her and how she's just trying to protect herself. She actually said, "What if you decide to leave me after I've invested years in this marriage? I need security." I tried to explain that the original prenup already provided her with plenty of security. It included a generous settlement that would allow her to live comfortably. Plus, it would increase based on how long we were married. But apparently, that wasn't enough. She continued to insist that times are different now and that modern marriages are partnerships. That would be fine if she had actually been partnering with me in the business. But she hasn't. She's never once asked to learn about operations or inventory, nor has she shown any interest in the actual work. Instead, she started demanding ownership rights out of nowhere. The conversation escalated when I brought up her recent spending: a $900 blazer, $1,200 for a wellness retreat weekend, and $2,000 at some designer boutique, all within the last month. Her response: "Well, I need to look professional if I'm going to be part of the business." That's when I lost it a little and said, "Tiffany, you're not part of the business. You've never been part of the business. Changing legal documents behind my back doesn't make you part of the business." She started crying, saying I was being mean and unfair. She claimed she just wanted us to be true partners and asked why I was making such a big deal out of small changes to the prenup. Let me tell you, trying to secretly get half of someone's business isn't a small change. That's like saying, painting your house a different color while you're on vacation is a minor detail. The whole thing ended with her storming out, saying she needed time to think and that I clearly didn't value her enough. She's been staying at her parents' house ever since. I talked to my lawyer, and he said the changes aren't valid since I never agreed to them. However, he is worried about what other documents Tiffany might try to modify before the wedding. After that fight over the prenup, Tiffany kept texting me long messages about how unreasonable I was being. One message read, "I can't believe you're acting like this. I thought you trusted me after all these years together. Few small changes." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Trust goes both ways. "Tiffany, you altered legal documents without telling me. How is that okay?" "They're just small changes," she said, as 3 dots appeared and disappeared on the screen. Then another message popped up. That's when she dropped the bomb. Mark said, "Every smart woman does this before marriage. At least someone is looking out for my interests." I sat back in my office chair, pinching the bridge of my nose. Mark, of course, her brother, who drifted back into town 3 months ago, trailing the debris of 3 failed marriages and a resume of 6-month jobs like toilet paper stuck to his shoe. Before I could respond, my office door burst open. "Amy," my assistant rushed in behind Tiffany, her face flushed. "I'm so sorry, sir. I told her you were in the middle of." Tiffany stood in the doorway, her blonde hair disheveled, eyes blazing. Across from my desk, my biggest supplier turned in his chair with raised eyebrows. "We need to talk about this now," Tiffany announced, her voice echoing off the windows. "You can't just ignore me because you're mad about the prenup." The color drained from my face. "Tiffany, I'm in a meeting." "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Am I interrupting business?" She spat the word like it was poison. I turned to the client, who was already gathering his papers. "I am so sorry about this. Perhaps we could reschedule for tomorrow." After he left, I closed the door and turned to Tiffany. "What were you thinking? You can't just burst into business meetings." She tossed her purse onto a chair. "Oh, so now I can't even come to my future business. Mark says I need to start asserting myself more." The mention of her brother's name made my jaw clench. "This isn't your business, Tiffany. And why are you taking advice from Mark? He's never run anything successful in his life. Don't you dare talk about my brother like that." Say stepped closer, jabbing a finger at my chest. "He's been through divorces. Hey, he knows how men like you operate." I stepped back, stunned. "Men like me? What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what it means." She crossed her arms. "Businessmen who think they can control everything with money. Mark told me all about guys like you." I just stood there, unaware of. The woman standing in front of me. Is she the same one I fell in love with? "Mark says I should be on all the bank accounts before the wedding," she declared. "He says that's the only way to make sure you don't hide money from me." I stared at her, trying to reconcile this person with the Tiffany I knew. 3 months ago, the independent woman who supported my dreams, who laughed at my bad jokes, who never needed anyone to tell her what to think. "Tiffany," I said softly, "the original prenup already guarantees you'll be taken care of. Why isn't that enough?" Her eyes flashed. "Taken care of? I'm not some charity case. I deserve half of everything. Mark says that's what courts usually give wives anyway." "But you haven't contributed to building this business," I said, immediately regretting my words. "You've never even worked. Here, I've been supporting you emotionally." She paced the office like a caged animal. "That counts for something. And once we're married, I'm going to be crucial to the business." "How? You don't know anything about running grocery stores?" "I can learn." Her voice cracked slightly. "Mark says I'm smart enough to run any business. He says you're just trying to keep me dependent on you." I sank into my chair, suddenly exhausted. She was speaking with Tiffany's voice, but the words were all Mark's. I tried one last time. "Can we talk about this without bringing up what Mark says? Why are you so threatened by my brother?" She leaned over my desk. "Just because he's warning me about how these things usually go, I'm not threatened by Mark. I'm concerned you're taking life. Advice from someone who's failed at everything he's tried." The silence that followed was deafening. Tiffany's face turned red, then purple. "How dare you? she exclaimed, grabbing her purse, hands shaking. Mark has been nothing but supportive. He's the only one telling me the truth about how to protect myself. You're just mad because he's helping me stand up to you. She stormed toward the door, then turned back, her eyes cold. Mark says I should be documenting all of this your controlling behavior, how you're trying to isolate me from my family. It'll all be useful later. The door slammed behind her. I reached for my phone to call my lawyer, but he interrupted. Has Tiffany's brother Mark ever asked about the details of your business finances? My blood ran cold. I remembered my accountant mentioning strange calls from a potential investor, someone asking oddly specific questions about our corporate structure and profit margins. Someone who, in retrospect, sounded an awful lot like Mark. I looked at the floor, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle over me. A photo on my wall captures us at the beach last summer. Her head thrown back in laughter as I made some stupid joke that feels like a lifetime ago now. The engagement ring I'd spent months picking out suddenly feels like a lead weight in my gut. I don't know what to do. Call off the wedding or try to wait out Mark's influence. Every option feels wrong, like I'm either giving up too silly or being naive, hoping things will magically go back to normal. Something tells me this is just the beginning. After Tiffany's outburst at my office, her mom called me. This is the same person who once told Tiffany she lucked out finding a hardworking guy like me. Well, it seems like Mark got to her too. The conversation went something like this. James, we need to talk about how you're treating Tiffany. Do you mean? She's the one who tried to change our prenup behind my back. Mark explained everything to us. You're trying to control Tiffany with money. You want her to sign this unfair prenup. Mrs. Anderson, that's not true at all. The original prenup was very fair. Tiffany's the one who Mark says these prenups are just ways for rich men to keep women powerless. Did you know his first wife got nothing in their divorce? He's trying to protect Tiffany from making the same mistakes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mark's first wife got nothing because he had nothing. He gambled away their savings and lost their house. How is that even comparable to my situation? But it got worse. Tiffany's dad, who used to go fishing with me and treated me like a son, sent me this text. Very disappointed in you, James. We thought you were different. Mark showed us the prenup you're trying to force on Tiffany, making her sign away all her rights. That's not what we raised our daughter for. I tried explaining that they had it backwards, that Tiffany was the one who changed things without telling me, but they wouldn't listen. According to them, I was just proving Mark right by refusing to share with their daughter. The next day, I got a group text from Tiffany's cousins, people I've spent holidays with, helped move apartments, and even hired one of them at one of my stores. The message read, "We always knew there was something off about you. Mark was, right? You're just another greedy businessman trying to take advantage of our family. Tiffany deserves better." I replied, "You guys remember when Mark borrowed $5,000 from your aunt for his foolproof business idea last year? Did he ever pay that back?" They left the group chat. I decided to do some digging. Turns out, Mark has been holding family meetings without me. He's been telling everyone stories about his divorces, painting himself as the victim of gold-digging wives who took everything. Again, how do you take everything from someone who has nothing? He's convinced Tiffany's whole family that all successful business owners are manipulative and will eventually abandon their wives. He's using his own failed marriages as proof that Tiffany needs to protect herself by taking as much as she can now. The worst part? Tiffany seems to believe every word. She even posted on Facebook, "Sometimes people show their true colors when money is involved. So grateful for my brother's wisdom and guidance. Some men will never understand that. Marriage means sharing everything." I responded, "Does that include sharing the truth about changing legal documents behind your partner's back?" She blocked me. That was it for me. I decided to talk to Mark face to face. I found out he was staying at some extended stay motel. I texted him asking to meet at a nearby coffee shop. I walked into the coffee shop and spotted Mark at a corner table. He was already smirking as I approached, like he had won some game I didn't know we were playing. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Mark leaned back, that smirk still plastered on his face. "Hey, future brother-in-law." He paused, tilting his head. "Or maybe not, the way things are going. ... Cut. The act. Mark," the words came out sharper than I intended. "I know what you've been doing." He spread his hands innocently. "I'm just looking out for my baby sister. By telling her to change legal documents behind my back? Calling my office, pretending to be an investor." He didn't even try to deny it. Just sat there with that insufferable smugness radiating from him. I can't blame a guy for doing his research. Someone's got to watch out for Tiffany's interests. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice level. She had interests before you showed up, a career, independence, plans of her own. Now she's just parroting your divorce stories. I'm teaching her how the real world works. His voice hardened. "You think you can just lock up all?" Her voice trembled with anger. I cut her off, trying to keep my own frustration in check. The original prenup was more than fair. And you know that. You even had your lawyer friend look at it. Something shifts in his expression, like a mask slipping. "Fair. Please." He leans forward, his eyes narrowing. "I've seen your company's numbers. Tiffany deserves at least 75% for putting up with you. These grocery stores are basically a gold mine. My coffee cup freezes halfway to my mouth. How did you see my company's numbers?" He blinks, catching himself. "Oh, Tiffany might have left some papers lying around. So what's your real game here, Mark? The pieces are starting to fall into place. You're using Tiffany too? Get what you couldn't get from your own marriages." His face flushes red. "You don't know anything about my marriages. Those women took everything." "Took what?" "The gambling debts, the maxed out credit cards, the failed business ideas." His fist slams against the table, making our cups rattle. "You think you're so much better than me because you got lucky with some stores. I could run circles around your business if I had the chance." Then he says the words that make everything click. "Tiffany already promised me a position in the company once she gets her share." I stare at him, the truth finally clear. "So that's what this is about. You're not protecting Tiffany. You're using her to get yourself a paycheck. She's family." He spits back. "Family takes care of each other. Unlike you, trying to keep everything for yourself. The only person trying to take everything is you. Does Tiffany know?" "About your plan." His expression flickers. "Tiffany understands that I'll be a valuable asset to the company. I've got experience." "Experience in what?" "Losing other people's money." His face darkens. "You think you're so smart. Wait until Tiffany tells everyone how you verbally abused her during this conversation, how you threatened her. Brother, how you're trying to isolate her from her family." I reach for my phone, placing it on the table. "You mean this conversation? I've been recording." The color drains from his face, then floods back in an angry rush. He starts shouting about recording laws, but I can see the panic in his eyes. He stands up so quickly that his chair scrapes against the floor. "You've just made a huge mistake. Tiffany will never believe you over me." He leans down. "Once she gets her share of the business, you'll be begging me for a job." As he storms out, I'm already sending the recording to my lawyer. The next morning, my phone lights up with a text from Tiffany. "How dare you threaten my brother? Mark was right about you all along. You're just jealous because he understands business better than you." I don't respond. Just forward the messages to my lawyer and wait for what comes next. 2 days later, Tiffany shows up at my house unannounced. She still has her key and just walks in while I'm working from home. The moment I see her face, I know this isn't going to be a discussion. She's beyond angry about me recording her brother. But what strikes me most is how she seems like a completely different person from the woman I fell in love with. I try playing her the recording of Mark admitting his plans for a cushy job in my company, but she refuses to even listen. It's like watching someone in denial about a basic truth. The more evidence I present, the harder she fights against it. Her face goes through a range of emotions when I play the recording. When I bring up the security footage of Mark going through my office and the business documents she's been sending him, she turns it around on me. Suddenly, I'm the bad guy for having security cameras in my own office. The fact that they were stealing private business documents doesn't matter to her. In her mind, being engaged means everything I own is already partly hers. The most heartbreaking moment comes when we talk about how she's changed since Mark came back into her life. Before him, she'd never shown any interest in running grocery stores or understanding business operations. Now she's claiming she deserves 75% of everything because of her emotional contribution. It wasn't even her talking anymore. Every sentence started with Mark says. She'd lost her own voice completely. She starts showing me texts about divorce lawyers before we were even married. She's been planning our divorce while we were still planning our wedding. The woman I trusted enough to propose to is actively plotting how to take my business apart. She doesn't even seem to understand why this is wrong. In her mind, it's just being smart about her future. She even says, I need to ensure I'm secure. As if I didn't give her security from the start. When she finally leaves, she isn't the same person who walked in. The Tiffany I knew and loved is gone, replaced by someone who sees our relationship as nothing more than a transaction. The business opportunity she had chosen to pursue led her to believe Mark's twisted view of marriage and business over everything we had built together. That night, as her family bombarded me with messages accusing me of being controlling and having hidden cameras, I realized how much Tiffany had changed. She had gone from someone who valued trust and independence to someone who thought it was acceptable to share confidential business information with my competitors just because we were engaged. The next morning, when I found out about her meeting with my competitor, I knew it was truly over. It wasn't just about ending an engagement anymore. It was about accepting that the person I loved had been completely transformed by her brother's toxic influence. The trust was gone, and without trust, there was nothing left to save. That night, I made my decision. Although it hurt deeply, I knew there was no way for me to continue in this relationship. I thought I needed someone who trusted me and didn't get manipulated easily. If she was now listening to her brother and turning against me, who else would she be listening to when we got married? So, I sent her a formal email, copied to my lawyer, explaining that the wedding was canceled due to her attempts to modify the prenup without consent, and her trying to share confidential business information with competitors. I also included the recording of Mark admitting to their plan. 20 minutes after I sent it, my phone started exploding with notifications. Tiffany called me crying, switching between begging me to reconsider and threatening to expose me as a controlling abuser. She kept saying things like, Mark says you can't just cancel a wedding without agreeing on a settlement first, and you owe me compensation for emotional damage. I just kept quiet and recorded everything. My lawyer said that was the best approach when someone shows their true colors. After some hours, Tiffany texted me again when she decided to change tactics. Apparently, she vented about it to her brother, but she insisted, fine, but I'm keeping the ring, and I'll stay in the apartment until I'm ready to leave. You owe me that much. So if I owed her something after what she tried to pull. My mom called me practically in tears, asking how I could do this to Tiffany. She loves you. She just wanted to feel secure. I tried explaining the prenup changes and the business documents, but Tiffany had already worked her magic. According to her version, I was this controlling guy who wouldn't share with my future wife. Tiffany told my family everything about how I was trying to leave her with nothing. I had to go to my parents' house with my laptop and show them everything. The recordings, the modified prenup, all of it. My mom got real quiet after that. But Tiffany wasn't done, not even close. Remember? That emergency credit card I gave her last year. The one that was supposed to be for actual emergencies. She went on the craziest shopping spree I've ever seen in just 3 days. She racked up almost $122,000 in charges. When I saw the charges coming in, I called her immediately. You know what she said? It's just, I deserve nice things after everything I've done for you. I've invested too much time in this relationship to walk away with nothing. When I reminded her the card was for emergencies, she laughed, actually laughed, said I should have been more specific about what counted as an emergency. That was it for me. While she was still on the call, I pulled up my banking app and canceled the card on the spot. No warning, no discussion, just done. She went dead silent for a second, then lost it, demanding to know how I could do this to her after everything. But at that point, I wasn't about to keep funding her definition of an emergency. My lawyer says we'll get the ring back. It's legally a conditional gift for marriage in our state. The apartment might take longer because tenant rights are complicated, even though she's not on the lease. Everything was a total mess. My head was spinning, and all I wanted was for this nightmare to end. But things took another turn a couple of weeks after the breakup when Emily, Tiffany's sister, found Mark's laptop while helping him with some job applications. What she found instead was a detailed plan he had written out, a step-by-step guide on how to scam me using Tiffany. We're talking spreadsheets with timelines, planned divorce dates, and even calculations of how much money he expected to get from my business. Emily showed everything to their parents first. The documents proved Mark had been planning this for months before he even moved back to town. He'd researched my business, figured out which locations were most profitable, and even made notes about which family members he needed to convince first. Tiffany was just his puppet, and he had spent months pulling her strings. Emily even found Mark's texts. I had a series of messages with a guy who turned out to be a fake lawyer. They were discussing how to manipulate Tiffany with gems, saying things like, "She's too trusting. This will be easy. Once she's married, we can push for majority control." Mark even promised this guy a percentage of what they thought they'd get from my business. When Tiffany finally saw all this evidence, something cracked when Emily told me she spent 3 days locked in her room, reading through everything. All those business ideas Mark claimed he lost to his ex-wives were total lies. His failed marriages weren't because his wives took everything. They left because he kept trying to scam their families. Tiffany showed up at my office last week, and security called me because she was crying in the parking lot. When I went down there, she looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. She kept saying she didn't know and was so sorry, asking if we could please talk about fixing this. I'll admit, for a second I felt bad for her. Then she said, "I've learned my lesson. We can do the original prenup now. I won't ask for any of the business stuff." That's when I realized she still didn't get it. This wasn't about the prenup anymore. This was about trust and who she really was. I told her, "Tiffany, you didn't just try to take my business. You betrayed my trust. You shared confidential information with competitors, maxed out my credit card, and tried to turn my whole family against me." I added, "Mark might have manipulated you, but you chose to go along with it." She started crying harder, saying she'd been scared of ending up like Mark's ex-wives. He had convinced her that all successful men hide their assets and that she needed to strike first. She actually thought she was protecting herself by trying to scam me. The conversation ended with her saying something that showed she still didn't really understand. She said, "I gave up so much for you. I deserve another chance." I just looked at her and asked, "What exactly did you give up, Tiffany? Your part-time job that you hated? The apartment you could barely afford? Or just the chance to scam someone else?" She left after that, but kept texting me for days, saying things like, "We can start fresh. I still love you, and I'll prove you can trust me again." Emily told me Tiffany's been telling everyone she's learned from her mistakes and grown as a person. It's been 2 weeks now, and the more she tries to pull me in, the more disgusted I feel by the idea of going back to her. The whole thing would be almost sad if Tiffany weren't still trying to work angles. Yesterday, She had her new lawyer contact mine about emotional damages from the broken engagement. The lawyer dropped her case as soon as my lawyer showed him Mark's notebook and the evidence of their planned scam. Mark is now facing charges for corporate espionage. It turns out he tried to sell my business data to competitors. Tiffany's not speaking to him anymore. But honestly, that doesn't change what she did. Maybe Mark manipulated her, but she was a willing participant until she got caught. I've officially moved on, changed all my business security protocols, and upgraded all systems. Yeah, I'm a lot more careful about who gets close now. This whole thing taught me that sometimes people aren't changing into someone else. They're just revealing who they really are.